Eruvin Daf. Today's email comes to us from Benjamin Schwartz from the Five Towns. Dear Rebellion team, thank you. It's only because of this amazing team that I'm finally learning Gemara daily. 9 months strong. Wow. I realize that MEY team is like a well-oiled aircraft. Rebelli is the pilot that is in charge of actually flying the airplane. However, he has his cohort of co-pilots, flight engineers, navigators, and air traffic controllers that work seamlessly in the background to make certain that the flight is as smooth as possible. Thank you to Rebelli for your interactive, enlightening, and most enjoyable Daf Yomi share. Yehoshua for your constant checking in on us and words of encouragement and reminders. Yosef, your smiling face or shining through on Zoom while you're simultaneously working the 8 minute and never actually sleeping. Gary for doing all the tech work behind the scenes and for making sure to mute us all mid-sentence. And Noam, Avi, Mordechai, and all the other guys. And everyone else that works tirelessly behind the scenes. And not to forget the wonderful MDY family that loves to bicker with each other on WhatsApp all hours of the day and night, just like the true family. I truly cannot say it enough times. Thank you. Binyamin, beautiful. Alei v'hatzlach Binyamin. The Gemara tells us a story. The Rosh Golos had in his backyard an orchard. Around the orchard, surrounded by a fence. So this was a karfaf that was loy hukaf ladira. It was surrounded not for residential purposes. Later on, he built, let's call it a gazebo. The Gemara calls it a varnica, a gazebo. The Rosh Golos wanted to use the gazebo on Shabbos to eat a meal. So he asked Rav Huna bar Chinina to do something so that he could carry his key for the gate to get into the orchard all the way to the gazebo and bring it back. And this, by the way, is a pshat in Rashi that Rashi loves, but you'll find it on Daf Chof Vav Amid Aleph towards the center of the Daf. So Rav Huna went along and built a wall out of reeds, every 3 tfachim, another reed, temporary wall. Rava said it's not necessary. So he removed all the reeds, and later on, Rav Papa and Rav Huna took these reeds, they took the wood, so that no one else would use it later on. Rava wanted to be makel and show that it's not necessary. Why? Since he built this avarnica, so now he made it ladira, then the walls around are all hukaf ladira. So Gemara tells us that Rava was bombarded with questions to the point where he had to retract and say that he made a mistake. What were the questions? Ravina asked Rava, it says that the tchum, that you can't go past the city limits, depends if it's a new city or an old city. A new city, and the Gemara describes what's a new city, a city that had a wall first, and afterwards they built the houses. So that's a city that you measure not from the city limits, rather from the last house. So Avarnica is the same thing, this gazebo, because it was built after the wall. Rav Papa asked Rava, there's halacha that mechitzos, walls that are built for the workers, to give them shade, to give them privacy, they have a halacha of Rosh Hashanah, but they don't have a halacha of a mechitza, as a mechitza of the Urim, that you could say that this is a residential area. Avarnica also, these are mechitzos for temporary use. Rav Huna asked, the Rav Huna said that in a certain neighborhood, he went around making eruvei chatzeros for each neighborhood individually and not for the entire city. Because in this city, it was a small city, but they had these very large pits where people would put their date pits, which is ox food, into these long pits. And they had walls around it, but these are walls to protect the storage and not to live in. So he did not consider these walls as proper walls, and therefore he made an Eruv. Says the Gemara, by the Varnica, this gazebo, these walls are more for the temporary walls, and therefore they shouldn't be considered proper walls. So Rava retracted. The Gemara says a very interesting thing. The Rosh Golos was very upset. Why did you have to retract on Shabbos? You knew about this on Friday. Couldn't you just retract it on Friday, and then I could have done something differently? And he used the lashon, Chachamim Hema Lahara, they are Chachamim only to do bad, Ulehetiv Layadu, and they don't know how to do good. We learned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer says that if you have a karfaf, Shaloi Hukaf Ladira, a karfaf that is not surrounded, the fence wasn't made for residential use, it could be even 30 saw. Chananya says, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, even 40 saw. Says Rabbi Yochanan, they both argue in the same pasuk. Because it says by Yeshayahu, they went to the backyard of Chizkiyahu, it says, Lo yetze el chatzar tichayna. Lo yetze el chatzar tichayna. It says the word ha'ir, but we read it chatzar. Says Rabbi Yochanan that the courtyard of a king is like a medium city. And the question is, what does a medium-sized city look like? Is it 30 saw or 40 saw? But why did he have to go, Yeshayahu, to the backyard, the courtyard of Chizkiyahu, says the Gemara, because Chizkiyahu got sick. Yeshayahu put Talmid Chacham there to learn Torah in order to prevent the Malach HaMavet from entering his house. Says the Gemara, but that's not a good idea to do. You don't want to start up with the Malach HaMavet. If he sees that you're provoking him and saying you can't get in here because we're learning Torah, then it'll work even harder. But Chizkiyahu, since he was such a tzaddik, there wasn't a problem. If one of the people in a mavoi forgot to make an eruv, so one of the chatzeros didn't make an eruv, so his chatzer makes it asur on everybody else. So no one that has a chatzer over there could carry from one to the other, unless that person that forgot to make the eruv, who can no longer make the eruv on Shabbos, if he wants, he could be mevatel his rishos. He's mafkir his rishos. He says, I no longer am associated with my property. So Rabbi Eloi, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, says, if one does so, and he's mevatel his chater, automatically he needs to be mevatel his house. And therefore, everybody can carry in the chater and also into his house. He, on the other hand, is different. He could only carry from right outside of their house into their house, but he cannot carry in and out of his house. And the Gemara explains, because Rabbi Eliezer holds that he's mevatel rishus ba'ayin yafa, with a large eye, he's nice about it, he's generous about it. And therefore, let's say there's 5 partners here. He's mevatel his rishos. He gives over his property to every one of the 5 partners. Whereas Chachamim hold a person is mevatel ba'ayin ra. So if a person is mevatel just his chatzar, he doesn't mean to be mevatel his house. And the same thing applies. If a person is mevatel to Ruvain, it doesn't mean that he gives over his rishos to Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. So if there are 5 people, it doesn't work for all 5 people. However, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan admit that if a person says specifically, Rabbi Eliezer says, I'm specifically not being mevatel my house, then of course, only his chatzar is batal in his house. And Chachamim say, if a person says specifically, not only am I mevatel my chatzar, but I am mevatel my house, then it works according to Chachamim. In other words, it has everything to do with what a person says specifically. Have a wonderful day.